Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the language that I had to learn when I lived in West Africa. It's not an easy language to learn, and I'm one who has to have the grammar book. I can't just pick it up the way the children do. So my first 3 months, all I did was study the language. Had an African teacher and a missionary and the grammar book and vocabulary. And I studied and studied and studied and couldn't go to work until I could pass certain areas in that that satisfied them that I could handle myself. And I learned to count the hard way. The nurse had just dumped me off with at one of the spots where we would call it the first aid center, and she told me to count with the young man who was the aide there. So I'd learned to count, but that was simple. The language is very, very different. And the grammar aspect is totally contrary to anything that we would think about. For example, I did not live in my house. I lived in the house of Lothay. The children did not live in their house. They lived in the house of Lothay. My name was Mama Bompolo, and I learned to spell it finally. But in learning the language, I discovered one that I did really love to learn the grammar, to understand it. But the tones. The tones tell the story. The language has such a tonal language. If you get the tone wrong, you don't know if somebody came, they're on their way, they're here, or they're going to come tomorrow. You just got to get the tone right. I'm sure you've all heard or read or something about the African drum. And the drum sets the tones, and that if you train a long time to be a drummer, because you got to get the tone just right. Well, I think I'm doing pretty good. I've finished my 3 months of language study, and I'm kind of on my own with the workers that I am responsible for in various kinds of ways. And I decide I'm good enough that I can pray in church. Well, there's nothing like hubris to get you in trouble. So I told the preacher I was ready to pray. Well, I began to pray, and the snickers began in the congregation. And I'm thinking, what have I done? What tone did I do wrong? Well, I finished the prayer, and then I said to the pastor, what did I do wrong? He said, you prayed to the legs, not to God. So I got my tone wrong. So I really had to learn the tones. And that was the really difficult part. The grammar was not that hard, because I like grammar. So that was not so difficult. But the tones were very, very difficult. Well, sometimes you find yourself a little bit smarter, not as smart as you think you are. And when you're in those kinds of situations, it's best to just keep your mouth shut and just wait. And so I didn't pray again in church for a long time. So someday I'll tell you more about the language, but that's enough for today. See you later.